A lot has changed since the time Joe was tried and sentenced to death.
Death row inmate Joseph Corcoran is scheduled to die by sunrise this Wednesday. Tonight on News 8, I talked to his attorney about the last-ditch effort to stop his execution. The Indiana Department of Education finalizing a big change to high school diplomas tonight, how state lawmakers are reacting. And the mile-high meltdown. Later in sports, highlights from the Colts' crushing loss to the Denver Broncos.
News 8 at 11 starts now.
Good evening. Attorneys for death row inmate Joseph Corcoran have filed a new motion requesting a stay of execution. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tim Spears. The defense wants time to show Corcoran is not mentally competent, which would make his execution for murdering 4 people in 1997 unconstitutional. In an Inmate investigation, I talked to one of Corcoran's attorneys about the last-ditch effort to save the life of a murderer.
Indiana needs to decide whether they want to execute someone who is seriously mentally ill.
Joseph Corcoran, seen here after his murder conviction in 1998, is scheduled to die by lethal injection before sunrise on December 18th, unless his attorneys, including Joanna Green, are successful in stopping his execution.
We've learned a lot about mental health in the years since Joe was sentenced to death. We've learned a lot about Joe's mental health. We've learned a lot societally about mental health and how it impacts people's behavior.
Corcoran, awaiting the death penalty inside the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City, has been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He's made claims prison guards are targeting him with an ultrasound machine to torture him, and in November sent a handwritten letter to the Indiana Supreme Court asking to withdraw his defense, allowing the state to end his life.
I think that there needs to be a more updated mental health evaluation, determine whether he's competent to make that decision. Otherwise, the state is capitulating to his suicide by lethal injection.
So what would you say to people who believe that for justice to be carried out, he needs to be put to death?
Being in prison for the rest of your life is a fair amount of justice for any crime.
Religious leaders have protested outside the State House, calling for Governor Eric Holcomb to grant clemency. But this week, Holcomb made it clear to me, barring a decision from the court, he has every intention of carrying out Corcoran's execution.
So with all due respect to the courts, we're on their timeline up until we're not. And that could be the, 11th hour.
The Indiana Supreme Court rejected 2 requests to block the execution earlier this month.
Do you think that your team has been giving a fair shot at making their case?
I don't. We need to have an evidentiary hearing to determine whether he's competent to be executed.
In the State House, Republican State Representative Bob Morris has asked for Governor Holcomb to simply delay the execution as he plans to introduce a bill to abolish the death penalty in the upcoming legislative session. That would allow lawmakers and the next governor to make the ultimate decision.
To put someone to death weeks before a bill is being introduced that could potentially abolish the death penalty in Indiana seems unjust and inhumane.
The Attorney General's office, in its latest filing, said the execution should be carried out because of Corcoran's own request to end litigation. If this latest attempt to stop Corcoran's execution fails, he could still petition the U.S. Supreme Court, but his defense tells me it would most likely be in the governor's hands at that point. Indiana lawmakers are split on new high school graduation requirements. The Indiana Department of Education passed the Diploma redesign unanimously this last week. News 8's Kyla Russell shows us where representatives on both sides of the aisle stand on the update.
Starting next school year, schools can choose to require their high schoolers to earn 42 credits to turn their tassel. That's 2 more than what's needed now. But that isn't the only thing that's changing. Students will soon choose to follow one of 3 pathways and earn what's called seals toward each, essentially a certificate of readiness. Students can choose between the enrollment, employment, or enlistment and service paths.
These seals mean a great deal to high school graduates in Indiana, but I can't stress enough how these seals don't really mean much to states outside of, our students that are pursuing options outside of the state.
An earlier version of the proposal drew backlash from educators, parents, and Democratic State Representative Victoria Garcia-Wilburn of Fishers, who told me the new plan is a compromise, but she's still concerned.
Does not give enough time for school corporations to recruit additional school counselors. Unfortunately, in our state, we have one of the worst ratios of students to counselors. It's about 649 students to every 1 academic counselor.
Her Republican colleague, State Representative Michelle Davis of Whiteland, supports the change. She said in a statement to News 8, Indiana's high school diploma redesign is a significant step toward ensuring students graduate prepared for a rapidly evolving world and workforce. By emphasizing flexibility, academic rigor, and real-world experience, these updates reaffirm our commitment to investing in Hoosier students' development and future success. Part of that preparation includes the highly criticized work-based learning hours required by students. The new plan reduced the previously needed 100 hours to 75.
Considerably still concerned about the ability for our workforce to handle such demands in regards to apprenticeships, internships, volunteer hours, etc. I was happy to see the shift in number of hours extend to the summer, so I think that buys students some more time.
The diploma aims to address a declining number of students enrolling in higher ed, seniors without the skills to move on to career opportunities, and students disqualified from enrolling in the military finding out too late. Despite previous disapproval, the final plan is now fully supported by all of the state's public colleges and universities.
This might be one way to engage learners, but there is no one-size-fits-all solution.
Now the changes are set to be effective in all high schools by the 2028 to 2029 academic year. I'm Kyla Russell for Wish TV, wishtv.com, or follow us on Facebook for updates.
New tonight, IMPD is searching for the driver in a deadly hit and run, killing a person on the city's east side tonight. Police say a vehicle hit a motorcycle, severely injuring the rider, and they later died at the hospital. The vehicle drove off before police arrived. Investigators have not yet released details on a possible make or model of the car that they're looking for. Also new tonight, a shooting in Lawrence sends a man to the hospital. It happened on Post Road. Officers say another man was detained. No word on what led up to the shooting. Marion County hospitals will start restricting visitors this week to protect vulnerable Hoosiers from a surge of respiratory viruses. Under the new restrictions, visitors under the age of 18 or those with symptoms like fever, runny nose, or sore throat will not be allowed inside. Some hospitals, such as Community and IU Health, are implementing additional measures. For more on that, just scan the QR code on your screen to find all the information you need in the As Seen On section of wishtv.com. Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett will speak tomorrow on the next phase of the city's demolition of the Town and Terrace townhomes. The complex was once a staple neighborhood on the city's east side, but the city says it's deteriorated after years of drugs and crime. It will demolish 8 vacant buildings this month, the next step in a years-long fight to improve health and safety in the neighborhood. Once fully demoed, the city plans to redevelop the area. The Noblesville City Council will vote Tuesday on a proposal to rezone land on the city's north side for the Morse Village project. The land would be rezoned for apartments, businesses, and industrial complexes. Some residents are concerned about increased traffic and the project destroying local habitats. The city government has supported Morse Village, saying it would add a missing middle to the area.
And it looks like a little patchy fog tonight, mainly north of I-70, will give way to a few storms tomorrow morning, mainly south of I-70. More coming up.
Wish TV Storm Track 8, Indiana's best weather team. We are local.